Hello everyone, today I'm here to do another recommended reads video or my favorites video. I have done a few of these before where I talk about a particular genre within a genre. I'm talking about some of my favorite YA dystopian books. If I'm honest with you, I tend not to read a ton of dystopian books anymore. I feel like they were really popular and on trend a few years ago, especially when I joined BookTube. Dystopian books were very, very popular. And since then, it's kind of not been my favorite genre to read. I think I just read too much of it and now I'm not a big fan of it, but I still have my old favorites that I want to talk to you guys about. Not a ton of these, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I said, I read a lot of dystopian back in the day and not a ton of it I would recommend now, but yeah, so there's only like 6 or 7 books I'm gonna talk about today, so it's gonna be kind of a lesser favorites video than my other favorites because there's not a multitude of books, but either way, I'm going to share with you some of my favorites. So the first couple books I want to talk about are actually my most current favorite dystopian reads, and of course that is Scythe and Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. This is the part of the Arc of the Scythe series. These are the only 2 books out within the series and they're both dystopian, and I am obsessed with this series. I read Scythe last year before it got really hyped on BookTube, and it's gotten a lot of hype recently, and with good reason because it's such a good and amazing book. This is my first Neal Shusterman foray because he's written a ton of books before, but either way, I would highly recommend this series. Regardless if you like dystopian, this is an amazing series. Basically, we follow 2 characters named Rowan and Citra, and they are chosen to be Scythe apprentices. In this world, we have cured a lot of things. Hunger and disease and pretty much even death. So we have these scythes that control the population and they glean people. Everyone are picked to become Scythe apprentices, and they learn under a Scythe, and they learn a lot about how each Scythe operates and also about the kingdom of Scythedom and just politics in general. These books are gripping. They make you think constantly. They are probably my favorite dystopian read to date. I just love them. I mean, I gave both of these books 5 stars. I just am obsessed with it. So yeah, this is the most recent dystopian read for me, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this one. Like, please read these books. I know they've been getting a lot of hype, like I've said, but I think it's well deserved, and they're such amazing and gripping books. Yep. No dystopian video would be complete without talking about the Hunger Games trilogy. Perhaps my very first foray, as probably a ton of us, into dystopian fiction. I'm pretty sure you do not need me to tell you what the Hunger Games is about. These books have been around for a while. I think this really kickstarted the popularity of dystopian within YA. I think, honestly, Twilight kind of sparked just the YA genre in general, and the Hunger Games really started the dystopian and science fiction genre, which I'm very grateful for. I love the Hunger Games. My favorite book, if you're curious, within the series is definitely Catching Fire. I feel like everyone's favorite is Catching Fire, but I mean, I didn't hate Mockingjay. Everyone always slams on Mockingjay. I did not hate it. I recommend these books a ton. I'm sure you know what they're about, so I'm not even gonna tell you what they're about. And the movies are a really good adaptation, I think. I wasn't a fan of the last 2, honestly. My favorite, again, was Catching Fire, but as the movie and the book. But either way, love this series. Grateful for it because it kickstarted dystopian. The next series I want to talk about is a series, if I'm honest with you, I used to love, probably borderline obsessed with, but as the times have gone on and the years have passed, I have fallen probably out of love with this series. I don't think about it as much. I think if I would reread it, I probably wouldn't love it as much. It is the Divergent Trilogy by Veronica Roth. This trilogy, I think, came in a little bit after the Hunger Games, and it really continued the hype of dystopian books. I really enjoyed the first one. The first one is definitely my favorite within this series. I didn't mind the second one. Was not a fan at all of Allegiant. I think this has really started where my love list came from. I didn't love it as much, and overall, when I think about the series as a whole later on, like now, I'm not in love with it. I see that it has many flaws and there's many problematic themes within it, but it was a really good, fun thrill ride. Divergent is about we have this world where we have like 5 factors. Forgive me, it's been a while. Candor, which is the honest, abnegation, which is the selfless, Dauntless, which is the brave, Amity, which is the peaceful, and Erudite, which is the intelligent. And basically in this book we follow Triss, and when you're 16 in this series, you like take a test to see which faction that you belong in, and then you pick. Triss pretty much learns what she is. She is divergent. I don't think it's spoil anything. It's been out for so long, and the movie has been out since. And she usually categorized with like 3 or more than one faction, and she decides to go into the Dauntless faction, the Brave, and it's about her journey there, and it gets into a lot of political things. And like I said, I really enjoyed the first book a ton. It was such a great thrill ride. I was a really big fan of the character Four. He was the male protagonist in this book, and I loved him so much. Time goes on, I don't love his Four as much. But this is just an example of how much you can change as a reader. I read these books probably like 7 or 6 years ago, and I was madly in love with them, and now my reading tastes have changed quite drastically, and I don't love them as much, but I still have fond feelings for them, you know? I love them as a person, but I'm not in love with them. But I would recommend these, I think. I don't know, they've been out so long. I really enjoyed them. I like the first 2 at least. The third one was not a good one. And the movies, honestly, I've only seen the first one. I have not bothered at all with the other ones because I not think they were good, and I just wasn't a fan of them. But I still have to pay homage to one of the first dystopian trilogies I ever read. So yeah, I know there's a lot of other people out there that had the same feelings as me. Another trilogy that I want to talk about that I've probably gotten rid of on my shelf, actually, of getting rid of the Divergent trilogy as well, and that is The Maze Runner by James Dashner. Once again, I really enjoyed the first 2 books in the series, and I could not stand the last book, The Death Cure. I don't know what it is lately about dystopian books, particularly with the last book, but I don't know why I have such bad experiences with it. This is another book. This is another series that I read a really long time ago, so my memory is very, very foggy of it. Basically, we follow a main character, and he gets put in this maze, and he wakes up with all these different guys, and they don't know like how to get out of this place. They're literally in a like maze. I don't know how to get out of it, and then he discovers a maze, and they have to kind of, it just is very political, very intriguing. One of the first books I read that kind of has a male point of view, which I haven't read a ton of when I first started reading, but I really enjoyed the first 2. The first 2 were really fun thrill rides, and the third book happened, and I was like, I don't know what happened, honestly. The movies, once again, like Divergent, I've only seen the first one, have not watched the rest of them. I've heard the pretty decent things about it, but if I'm honest with you, I just have no interest in them anymore. I did really enjoy the Maze Runner series. If I would read it now, I don't know if I would love it as much, but again, it's one of the first dystopian books I read, and I really had a good time reading it. I remember it was such a fun thrill ride, and then by the end of the series, I was like, what has happened? But either way, I wanted to talk about that one. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it or not. I'm just talking to you guys a lot about dystopians that I've read. Maybe that's what I should call this video. Speaking of dystopians that I don't know if I would recommend is the Selection series by Kiera. I have voiced my opinion about this tons and tons of times again, and I will again now. This is a dystopian book that is literally The Bachelor set in a dystopian world. We follow a main character named America, and they basically have this bachelor thing going on, and they have to compete for the heart of the prince, and it gets more political and intrigue. And the first book, I would say this series is very a guilty pleasure read. That is for sure. I don't think you're gonna get a ton out of it. I don't think there's a lot of depth in it, but is it a fun series to read? It is, and I did enjoy the first 2 books, and again, like these past 2 series I've talked about, I could not stand the third book. I think the main problem I had with this one is the main character. She was very wishy-washy. I just didn't like her overall, but if I'm a really big dystopian reader and just want to have a good time, I would recommend the Selection series. It's a fun, quick read. Honestly, you're going to fly through it, and they're just the guilty pleasure reads, honestly. So as much as I say I don't really love the series, it was a fun series, I'm not gonna lie to you. Next up, I want to talk about the Delirium trilogy by Lauren Oliver. Again, one of the first dystopian series I've read, and I still actually really enjoy this trilogy. This trilogy gets a ton of mixed reviews, and I can understand why, but I still really like it. And I think if I would read these again, I still again would really like it. This is basically about a world where love is pretty much illegal. Like, people at 16 get these shots that pretty much stop the feelings of being like in love with someone. You're paired with someone to be married with and just have babies, and that is it. And we follow our main character, I forget her name, and she meets a guy and pretty much they fall in love. This is before she gets the shot, and they decide to be rebels and be in love, and it kind of goes off from there. Again, a lot of politics. I think that's kind of the trend with dystopian books, is you're getting a different world, so the political aspect is a lot different, and you're getting a lot of that political aspect. I really enjoyed this series. I wasn't, again, like all these dystopian books I keep talking about, wasn't the biggest fan of the last book, Requiem. I would say my favorite in this whole trilogy is definitely Pandemonium. It was amazing. I didn't hate the last book, but I didn't like the way it ended. I was very frustrated with how the series ended. But overall, again, another addicting, fast-paced read. I mean, a book about how it's illegal to fall in love. Of course you're going to want to read that, and of course you want to see characters that are going to fall madly in love. So I really enjoyed this one. Again, series that I want to talk about is last on my list because I'm not quite sure if it's dystopian or just straight up sci-fi. I feel like it's dystopian. You'll have to tell me. And that is the Legend trilogy by Marie Lu. This is her first trilogy she ever released. She's written another trilogy since then and started another series as well. This is all about, goodness, all of these I've read so long ago. We have basically once known as the western coast of the United States. It's now the Republic, and we follow a main character named June, who is a military prodigy, and then she has to find this really 15-year-old criminal named Day, who is a criminal, like I said. So from very different worlds, they cross paths, and now it's like a game of cat and mouse between Day and June. Of course, love happens, politics, things like that. I really enjoyed this trilogy. Definitely one of my favorite all-time dystopian trilogies. If it is dystopian, I still can't quite tell, but I really loved it. I love the romance, I love the political aspect, I love the thrill ride. I really tend to enjoy Marie Lu's books. With this series, ooh, I don't know what my favorite book is. I think it might be the first one, Legend, but I really enjoyed the second one as well. And again, I think the last one may be my least favorite. Maybe that's just dystopian books in general, like the last one's gonna be your least favorite. I'm not sure. So there you have it, some of my dystopian recommendations, even though I feel like half this video wasn't really a recommendations list per se, but I just want to tell you guys a lot about the dystopian books that I've read in the past and share with you my feelings on it. Maybe you'll like them more than I did, maybe your feelings have changed and things like that. Like I said, I don't read a ton of dystopian books nowadays, not to reach for as much as I used to. I much prefer different genres now, and that just shows you that you can change as a reader very drastically. So if you have some favorite YA dystopian reads, please leave them down below. I'm sure I've missed out a lot. Like I said, I have read a ton, and there are some that I really just didn't enjoy, which is why they're not even on this list. And all the ones that are on this list, I did enjoy in some aspect, even if I don't enjoy them now, if that makes any sense. I used to enjoy them, but now maybe not so much, but maybe you will. Oh my gosh, I'm rambling. Either way, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.